Olivia Reed stood by the window where morning sunlight streamed in, taking a sip of coffee as she gazed out from her small house in the Chicago suburbs. The light caught the subtle highlights in her chestnut hair as she admired the spring blooms in her modest garden. Her eyes reflected the hardships of life, yet a softness remained in her features, and when she smiled, a youthful glow returned to her face. "Mom, I can't button this jacket properly." Lucas's voice called from the living room. The 10-year-old boy had a navy blazer halfway on, his tiny fingers struggled with its ornate buttons. Olivia smiled gently and knelt in front of her son. "Yes, these fancy buttons are tricky, but don't worry. Mom will help you." The cool metal buttons felt smooth against her fingertips, reminding her of art supplies she handled daily. As she skillfully fixed her son's jacket, she felt her chest tighten at the thought of today, her former sister-in-law Natalie's art exhibition opening, one of the places she least wanted to be. Olivia had worked as an art teacher at the public elementary school for 8 years, long hours nurturing young talents, modest pay, and the constant battle for supplies and recognition for her art program. Yet she never complained, working passionately to both teach her students and raise her artistically gifted son. 3 years ago, Olivia's world collapsed when she discovered her husband Ethan was having an affair with his gallery assistant. Ethan was thriving as the owner of a prestigious art gallery, climbing the social ladder of Chicago's art scene rapidly. For him, a wife who had become just a public school teacher no longer matched his cultural status in the art world. "I want a divorce," he had told her, standing among his expensive art acquisitions. Olivia didn't shed a tear that day. She simply nodded quietly, signed the necessary papers, and returned to the small house with 7-year-old Lucas. That was her pride. "Lucas, today is a special day. It's your aunt's exhibition opening, so we need to be extra respectful of the venue and the artwork." Her son was perceptive and sensitive, with an artist's eye that noticed everything. He had felt how Ethan's family, especially his former grandmother Victoria and Aunt Natalie, had treated his mother. "Grandma Victoria and Aunt Natalie don't like your paintings, do they, Mom?" Olivia looked straight into her son's eyes, trying not to lie. "Art-world relationships are complicated, Lucas. They appreciate different styles than mine, but family connections remain unchanged." Even as she said this, Olivia remembered Natalie's cruel words every time she dismissed her work as amateur teaching art. A small wound formed in her heart. Natalie always prided herself on being superior, a graduate of a prestigious European art school, now engaged to Marcus, a renowned art critic. Today she would host a lavish exhibition opening at one of Chicago's finest modern art museums. Olivia's mother-in-law Victoria was even harsher. Her cultural elitism was strong, and she had never accepted that her son Ethan had married a woman with community college sensibilities about art. After their divorce, her disdain for Olivia's work became even more blatant. Strangely, she was also dismissive toward her grandson Lucas, treating his budding artistic talent almost like evidence of his mother's unfortunate influence. As she adjusted Lucas's collar, Olivia remembered the exhibition invitation printed on thick textured paper with embossed silver lettering. It had clearly been sent for appearance's sake within the art community. She had initially planned to decline, but when Lucas said, "I want to see my drawings displayed in the young artists section," she decided to go for her son's sake. She didn't know how transformative this day would be for her and Lucas, and for her former in-laws. "All right, Lucas, let's go." Olivia took a deep breath and smoothed her simple charcoal dress with hand-painted silk scarf. She had avoided ostentatious clothes, trying not to compete with the art, but unknowingly this enhanced her natural elegance. Before leaving the house, she placed her hands on her son's shoulders and said gently, "No matter what happens, we are family. Your art comes from your heart, never forget that." Lucas looked up at his mother, clutching his small sketchbook, and nodded firmly. Getting out of Diana's car in front of the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art, Olivia and Lucas hesitated for a moment. Climbing the stone steps and passing through the minimalist lobby with its art installations, they saw the exhibition reception desk ahead. Ms. Reed, the reception attendant, checked the list and momentarily looked confused. Her eyes moved back and forth between the list and their faces several times. "Please wait a moment," she called another staff member and consulted quietly. Olivia began to feel anxious. She squeezed Lucas's hand tight and looked around, curated spaces, perfect lighting, and art elites chatting with expensive champagne in hand. She keenly felt that her work didn't belong in this world. "I'll show you to the exhibition hall," the returned staff member smiled, though she seemed uncomfortable. They were led to a spacious gallery with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of Chicago's skyline. As they approached the community artists section, Lucas suddenly stopped. "Mom, look at this." While other artists' works had respectful descriptions, Olivia's painting alone was labeled Elementary Education Art Sample, Untrained Technique. Lucas's displayed sketch simply said, Public School Student Work. The blood drained from Olivia's face. She felt an impulse to remove her work immediately but hesitated when she saw her son's face. Lucas looked confused, his expression mixing indignation and embarrassment. "It's okay, Lucas, just a curatorial oversight," she pretended to be calm, turned the placard face down, and stepped back. The gallery gradually filled with people, women in avant-garde wear, men in expensive suits discussing art investments. And then Victoria appeared at the entrance. She wore a sculptural silver-gray ensemble with ancient art pieces as jewelry gleaming at her neck. "Oh, Olivia, you actually came," Victoria's voice mixed surprise with disappointment. She barely glanced at Lucas's displayed work and left to greet a collector. The ambient music began to play, and everyone turned toward the center. From the main exhibition space, Marcus appeared in an impeccably tailored suit. Behind him followed Ethan. Olivia's chest tightened seeing her ex-husband for the first time in months. He had transformed into an even more polished figure. Then Natalie entered, escorted by the museum director. She was wrapped in a designer dress, wearing a smile full of triumph. The gallery murmured with appreciation. The opening proceeded elegantly, speeches, champagne toasts, and the ribbon cutting. The curator and critic looked perfect together. Olivia maintained her composure for Lucas's sake, despite her complex feelings. The gallery tour began with champagne and canapés being served. Lucas received sparkling apple juice and was intently sketching his surroundings. Soon it was time for the formal viewing of the exhibition. "Mom, Dad is looking at us," Lucas whispered. Indeed, Ethan was glancing in their direction but showed no sign of approaching. Instead, a clinking of glass resonated throughout the venue. Victoria stood up and took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming today to celebrate the exhibition of my son's sister, my beloved daughter Natalie." She spoke eloquently about the curator's vision and the exhibition's cultural significance. Then suddenly her gaze turned to Olivia. "We have a special guest today, former family member Olivia." All eyes in the gallery turned to Olivia. She felt her face flush. "She normally teaches finger painting to children, so I have a suggestion," Victoria's voice dripped with cultivated disdain. "Olivia, would you mind explaining why your work resembles a child's artwork compared to the professional pieces here?" The gallery fell silent. Olivia sat frozen. Humiliation and anger coursed through her body, but Lucas's presence kept her from reacting. "Victoria, even as critique, that's," someone began to say. But Victoria waved her hand to silence them. "It's not cruel criticism. I'm being educational," Victoria's eyes gleamed coldly. Her community art project, not a genuine artistic expression. Her cultured laughter echoed throughout the space. Gradually, art patrons and friends began to murmur agreement. Many people, including Natalie, joined in the dismissal. Even Ethan, though uncomfortable, was nodding slightly. Olivia felt tears welling in her eyes. Her hands trembled, and her throat was dry. She wanted to escape, to disappear from this gallery. Just as she was about to stand up, there was movement from the seat next to her. Lucas had quietly pulled back his chair and stood up. At the sight of the 10-year-old boy, the murmurs in the gallery gradually subsided. Lucas's expression showed a calmness and artistic purpose beyond his years. He began walking toward the small platform where his sketchbook lay open. "Lucas," Olivia tried to call her son back in a low voice, but he had already stepped forward. In complete silence, Lucas stood before his open sketchbook with his small body. He surveyed the adults. "I have a special series to show alongside my exhibited piece," the boy's voice was surprisingly composed. "Actually, it reveals." As those words echoed through the gallery, the smile vanished from Natalie's face. She turned pale as if she had seen a ghost and froze. The critic Marcus looked at his fiancée with confusion. Ethan hurriedly stood up, trying to call out, "Lucas, that's enough." But the entire gallery was waiting for Lucas's next words. Lucas took a deep breath. The atmosphere pressing down on the 10-year-old boy's shoulders was too heavy, but his eyes didn't waver. He flipped open his sketchbook with one hand, placed the other on the edge of his display, and looked around at the adults. "Please stop dismissing my mom's art." Lucas's voice, though small, clearly resonated throughout the gallery. Dozens of eyes were fixed on him, holding their breath. The blood drained from Victoria's face, and Natalie remained frozen. The critic Marcus looked around in confusion. "Lucas, come here," Ethan called his son in a low voice, but the boy ignored him. "None of you know my mom," Lucas continued. "She wakes up at 6 every morning to prepare art supplies for her students. She reviews my sketches after school, and she stands all day teaching children, then helps me with techniques at night." Olivia remained frozen in her seat, feeling tears stream down her cheeks. She hadn't realized her son had been observing her artistic dedication so closely. "My mom never stopped creating no matter how discouraged she feels, so nobody has the right to judge her work." Murmurs began to rise from the gallery. Victoria hurriedly tried to approach Lucas. "Talented boy, this is a professional exhibition. I'll arrange a private lesson with a real artist later, so let's leave the critique to experts now, shall we?" Lucas quietly shook his head at those words. "I saw Aunt Natalie and my dad looking at Mom's submission." With that single sentence, the gallery froze again. Natalie suddenly stood up and grabbed her fiancé's arm. "Marcus, it's a child's imagination. Have him removed from here." However, Marcus hesitated. Seeing Lucas's artistic conviction and Natalie's panic, he gently removed the curator's hand and quietly sat back down. "Last week, when I was dropping off my youth competition entry at the museum, Dad's car was parked in the staff lot," Lucas continued matter-of-factly. "I was on my way to art class, but I realized Mom had forgotten her portfolio, so I stopped by Aunt Natalie's office." Ethan and Natalie's faces visibly paled. The door was slightly open, and I could hear them talking inside. "At first, I thought I'd say hello, but when I heard Mom's name, I started sketching what I saw." Victoria tried to interrupt again. "What are you saying? Today is a celebration of fine art. In a venue like this, a child's amateur drawings. I have evidence." At Lucas's words, Victoria fell silent. The boy turned several pages in his sketchbook. Olivia wondered when her son had created these images, then she remembered his constant sketching wherever they went. "I drew everything," Lucas said. Gasps of surprise rose from the gallery. Ethan tried to rush forward, but museum security stepped in his path. Natalie's face lost its last trace of color, and she stood rigid like a statue. Lucas displayed page after page of detailed sketches and held them up for everyone to see. First came intimate portraits of Ethan and Natalie together, then a sketch of Natalie saying, "Ethan, I want to see Olivia's pathetic painting at the exhibition. I'll label it amateur technique and humiliate her in front of everyone. The plan is perfect. It'll be the exhibition of the year." Then a drawing of Ethan responding, "Be careful. What if people discover you're carrying my child? Our relationship will be exposed too." Commotion erupted in the gallery. Olivia couldn't believe her eyes. Ethan and her sister-in-law? And pregnancy? She covered her mouth with trembling hands. The series continued. A sketch capturing Natalie's laughter. "Marcus doesn't suspect anything. If I tell him after we're married, it'll be too late. I've timed it perfectly so he'll think it's our child." Even more shocking images followed. "Since you divorced that talentless woman, you've returned to your true artistic self. We've always had a special connection," drawn from Ethan's perspective. "But be careful, we need to protect the gallery's reputation." Lucas closed his sketchbook and quietly returned it to his small backpack. The gallery was wrapped in complete silence. Marcus stood stock still, his face ashen. His colleagues were also stunned. Natalie had begun crying, and Ethan's face was flushed with anger and shame. Victoria collapsed into a chair, speechless with shock. "My mom works hard every day to inspire her students," Lucas began speaking again. His voice trembled slightly, but his artistic conviction remained unwavering. "Aunt Natalie, please stop dismissing my mom's work with my dad. And you should tell the truth to the man who is going to showcase your career. The boy looked at the critic. I'm sorry, but I thought you deserved to know what inspired these drawings. The atmosphere in the gallery was as cold and still as marble. Marcus slowly stood up and stared at Natalie, his eyes mixed with professional betrayal and personal sadness. Is this true? His voice trembled. Natalie covered her face with both hands and began crying violently. No. Lucas is making this up. It's a child's creative imagination. She desperately denied it, but her breakdown told the whole story. Victoria recovered and stepped forward to contain the situation. Everyone, this is clearly a misinterpretation. It's a talented child's fantasy. Please don't ruin this important exhibition with such drama. However, Marcus's publisher stood up and said sternly, has our reputation been compromised? Marcus, let's go. This curatorial partnership should be reconsidered. The critic's colleagues began to gather their things. Marcus gave the curator one final look and said, was it true, Natalie? Tell me. She couldn't answer. Instead, Ethan stood up. Enough, he said in a heavy voice. Let's be honest now. As the gallery watched with bated breath, Ethan bowed his head. It's true that I've been involved with Natalie, and she is expecting my child. With those words, the gallery fell into complete chaos. All color drained from Marcus's face, and he staggered backward. His assistant rushed to support him. Marcus's publisher was furious and tried to confront Ethan, but people around him intervened. Lucas closed his sketchbook and stepped away from his display. He walked to his mother and placed his small hand over Olivia's. I'm sorry, Mom, but I couldn't bear seeing them mock your art. Olivia couldn't find words. She embraced her son, pouring all of her emotion into that small body. The surrounding commotion felt like distant noise to her. Her world now consisted only of this talented, brave boy. Natalie continued crying uncontrollably, beginning to blame Ethan. Victoria was fiercely reprimanding both her son and daughter. Cries of "Art world scandal" and "How could you betray the museum" echoed through the gallery. Amidst the chaos, Olivia took Lucas's hand and quietly said, let's go home. They quietly rose from their seats and headed toward the exit with artistic dignity intact. On their way, a voice called from behind, wait, please. Turning around, they saw Marcus walking toward them with unsteady steps, his artist's portfolio clutched tightly against his chest like a shield. His face was pale as blank canvas, and his eyes were bloodshot with the raw emotion of betrayal. The man who should have been celebrating a career-defining exhibition now looked completely shattered, like a sculpture dropped from great height. Is it really true? He asked Lucas, his voice low and trembling so others couldn't hear, the words catching in his throat. Lucas looked straight into Marcus's eyes and nodded slightly, his young artist's gaze unflinching. I'm not making this up. My sketches show exactly what I saw and heard. Art doesn't lie, even when people do. Marcus closed his eyes painfully, the creases around them deepening. His expression was etched with professional betrayal and personal heartbreak that seemed to age him instantly. Olivia felt a wave of sympathy wash over him. They had both been canvas for others' deceptions. Your son has remarkable integrity and talent, Marcus said weakly, his critics' eyes still recognizing truth in art. To think that a young artist would have the courage to reveal such painful truth through his work in front of Chicago's entire art establishment. He placed his hand on Lucas's shoulder and quietly said, thank you for your honesty. Real art should always speak truth. From inside the gallery, the commotion continued to build like a crescendo, Natalie's theatrical sobbing, Victoria's angry declarations about family legacy. And the voices of shocked art patrons all mingled together in discordant harmony. Marcus. Natalie came rushing out from the gallery, the sound of her heels striking the marble floor like angry percussion. Her designer dress was rumpled like discarded sketches, and her once perfect appearance was ruined by tears that left dark trails of mascara down her cheeks. She desperately grabbed Marcus's arm and pleaded with him, fingers digging into the fabric of his jacket. That's not true. It's a child's vivid imagination. You know how young artists exaggerate reality. This is just abstract expressionism. Marcus slowly shook off her hand, his movement deliberate as a careful brushstroke. Ethan admitted it, didn't he? He's the father of your child, right? His voice was ice-cold and precise. That's not true. He's just protecting the gallery reputation. Natalie was desperate, her voice cracking. It's our exhibition. We've been building our artistic vision together for 5 years. Don't throw that masterpiece away over a child's doodles. Marcus shook his head and said quietly, I've supported your curatorial vision for 5 years, but you betrayed my professional trust with your brother, no less. You've made mockery of artistic integrity. He cut off his words and struggled to compose himself, breathing deeply as if preparing to face a blank page. I need time to reconsider our collaboration and everything it stands for. Then Ethan appeared too, emerging from the gallery entrance. He seemed to have escaped from the artistic scandal unfolding inside. His polished gallery owner appearance was now disheveled, and his face showed the intense conflict of a man whose carefully curated public image was crumbling. Natalie, stop denying it, he said in a tired voice that had lost all its confident gallery owner resonance. It's my failure as well. Marcus, I apologize for this deception that has compromised your critical reputation. You both are responsible for this travesty. Victoria cut in, her voice sharp as a chisel. Her anger was now directed at both her son and daughter, her carefully manicured hands gesturing dramatically. You've ruined my family's position in the art world. How could you compromise our gallery's standing and collection this way? Victoria glared at Olivia and Lucas, her eyes full of contempt like a harsh critic. You two are equally culpable, exposing private matters in such a public exhibition. Art should beautify, not destroy. Olivia remembered 3 years of artistic dismissal, all the contempt and belittling of her work she had endured in silence, and today, the final public humiliation of her creative spirit. She had tried to create quietly for her son's sake, but the final brushstroke had been applied now. She straightened her back like a sculptor finding her stance and said in a calm voice. You should understand artistic integrity better than anyone. Your son had an inappropriate relationship with his sister, creating a child together. And to conceal that, you tried to ruin an innocent man's reputation and my artistic career. We only revealed what was authentic. Victoria had no response to those words, her usual eloquence about art theory suddenly abandoned her. Natalie was now collapsed in tears, kneeling on the marble floor like a broken installation piece. Marcus, please don't abandon my exhibition. My career will be ruined. The critic's publisher approached and grabbed his colleague's shoulder firmly. Let's go, Marcus. We shouldn't associate our magazine with this family's creative deception. He looked at Olivia and Lucas and slightly bowed his head in professional respect. Thank you for bringing artistic truth to light. The boy has a remarkable eye. As Marcus's colleagues left, the critic still stood in front of Natalie, hesitating like an artist unsure of the final stroke. Is the child really Ethan's? He asked finally, his words falling like heavy paint drops. Natalie couldn't answer and just kept crying, her silence a canvas of confession. Her silence confirmed everything more clearly than any artist's statement could. Marcus slowly removed his press badge and placed it before her like the final signature on a finished work. Goodbye, Natalie. Your exhibition is beautiful, but built on lies. His words sounded like a final professional critique, and he too left, following his colleagues into the evening light. Ethan sat down next to Natalie and put his arm around her shoulders, the gallery owner finally facing a reality he couldn't curate. He looked up at Olivia once, then closed his mouth as if at a loss for words, the smooth-talking art dealer finally silenced. His eyes showed a flicker of genuine regret, perhaps for the artistic partnership they once shared. Victoria held her head in disbelief, muttering, "What do I do? What happens to the exhibition now? What will the board say?" Her cultural superiority had vanished in an instant, and she now looked like a vulnerable elderly woman whose collection had lost its value. Olivia took Lucas's hand and said quietly, "Let's go home. Your art doesn't need this place. True creativity comes from honesty." As they were leaving the museum, Marcus appeared before them again. He hesitated as if to say something, then said, "Your son has artistic integrity. Thank you for revealing the truth. I was blinded by prestige," his voice mixed gratitude and sadness. Olivia smiled gently. Art heals with time. May we both find authentic expression again. Outside, the evening air enveloped them. They got into Diana's car waiting in front of the museum, and Olivia gave their address. "I'm sorry to drag you away from your case. Is that okay?" she asked her sister. Diana looked at the mother and son in the back seat and smiled warmly. "No problem, sis. You two had quite an evening of truth-telling." As the car started moving, Olivia hugged her son tightly. "Lucas, you're my creative hero." Lucas buried his face in his mother's chest and said in a small voice, "Did I do something wrong with my drawings?" Olivia gently stroked her son's hair and shook her head. "No, you used your art to speak truth. That's what real artists do." But complex emotions swirled in her heart, the shock of her ex-husband and sister-in-law's betrayal, and the fact that they had conceived a child together. She now understood the reason for Ethan's dismissive attitude toward her art after the divorce and his distancing from Lucas. And above all, the uncertainty about how today's events would change their artistic lives. Would the Harringtons use their influence against them? How would Lucas develop his talents now? But tonight, she decided to put those worries aside. Now was the time to celebrate her son's courage and creative vision. "Mom, I'm hungry," Lucas whispered. Olivia laughed and kissed his cheek. "Yes, we missed the exhibition catering, didn't we? Let's get pizza on the way home and eat in our own creative space." The car continued through the evening darkness, and mother and son leaned against each other quietly, heading toward an uncertain but renewed artistic beginning. Tonight's revelations had changed their lives forever, but Olivia believed it was a transformation for the better. She said quietly, "Lucas, from now on, let's create boldly together. You truly are an extraordinary artist." Lucas looked up at his mother and nodded slightly. His eyes held a mature artist's resolve. Today, he had painted the first strokes of his authentic life. 3 months later, on an autumn afternoon, Olivia adjusted her new blazer at the Community Arts Center, looking at herself in the mirror. A program director nameplate gleamed on her office door. "Congratulations, Olivia," her fellow teachers surrounded her with handmade cards. "A perfect position for your vision." Since that day, her artistic life had begun to flourish in unexpected ways. The Arts Foundation, impressed by her teaching philosophy and personal work, had offered her leadership of their expanded program. "Your artistic integrity and dedication to children impressed us," the director had said, validating her creative approach. Meanwhile, the events at Natalie's exhibition had become a cautionary tale in Chicago's art circles, and reactions were surprising. Many supported Olivia and Lucas, praising their authentic expression. Natalie had left the museum to escape the scandal, starting a new career in a gallery several states away. Ironically, she was now raising a child while struggling to rebuild her reputation. She who once dismissed Olivia's work was now fighting for recognition herself. Ethan had lost several important clients, and his gallery's prestige had diminished. He had reached out to Olivia several times about Lucas's talent, but she firmly declined, saying, "We're creating our own path now." Victoria resigned from the museum board and retreated from public arts patronage. Her children's forbidden relationship had shattered her cultural pretensions. One day, Olivia received a formal apology letter with an expensive art book. After careful consideration, she sent back a simple sketch, saying, "Art should come from truth, not obligation." "Mom, look." Lucas returned from school, showing her a portfolio. "The youth competition selected my series." Olivia embraced her son proudly. Lucas had developed confidence in his artistic voice and had become admired by classmates for his expressive honesty. His brave exhibition had not only transformed his mother's career but also cemented his artistic path. In the evening, Olivia was preparing for her first solo exhibition at a respected gallery. A month after that day, Diana had introduced her to legitimate curators who recognized her unique perspective. With Lucas helping arrange the pieces, she was finally sharing her vision with the world. "Mom, will you teach and make art forever?" Lucas asked. Olivia smiled. "Yes, I can do both. This exhibition is just the beginning." She no longer felt defensive about her teaching art, but celebrated its influence. The artistic bond between her and her son had flourished since that day. Sometimes she reflected on the events at the museum. "If Lucas hadn't revealed his drawings that day, I might still be hiding my true artistic voice," she realized. Life sometimes unfolds through unexpected compositions. The exhibition meant to diminish her had instead unveiled her authentic creative path. Ready? She asked Lucas. They had planned to finish a collaborative painting tonight after the exhibition preparation. Lucas nodded brightly. Yes, Mom. We create better together. Olivia gently touched her son's artistic hands. Their story was not a final piece but the beginning of a lifelong creative journey.